Every morning you wake up, life hands you a blank canvas. What you paint on it is not decided by your past, your pain, or even your parents. It's determined by one powerful force: your choice. You're not what happened to you. You are not your environment. You are not your failure. You are what you choose to become. You can be born in a prison and still rise to lead a nation. You can be buried under rejection and still bloom into destiny. The greatest threat to your future is not the devil. It's your decision. So the real question is, what are you becoming by the choices you're making? Let me show you something. When God created Adam, He gave him dominion, not a destiny. Dominion is not a place, it's a mindset. He didn't say, this is who you will be. He said, be fruitful, multiply, subdue, and rule. In other words, you decide how far you go. There's no one God ever created who was born finished. Even Jesus, though He was God, had to grow in wisdom and stature. Luke 2, verse 52. Growth is a choice. Becoming is intentional. And that means mediocrity is never a calling, it's a compromise. Let me tell you something. The world doesn't want you to know. Your origin does not define your outcome. Where you were born, how you were raised, the limitations they handed you, those are not prophecies. They are starting points. And starting points don't determine final destinations. A broken beginning is not a broken identity. Some of the most powerful people on earth were born in the shadows. David was an afterthought, left in the field with the sheep while his brothers stood tall before the prophet. No one saw him coming. No one believed he qualified. But God said, I'm not choosing based on appearance. I'm choosing based on alignment. The world looks at your background. God looks at your capacity to rise. We live in a generation that worships the external. We praise platforms and followers. But let me tell you, God is not concerned with where you came from. He's concerned with what you're becoming. Being born in a pit doesn't mean you're sentenced to live there. It's not the pit that defines you, it's whether you choose to rise out of it. That's where character is built. That's where strength is forged. That's where greatness begins, not in comfort, but in confrontation. I once met a man who grew up in the slums of Mumbai. Dirt floors, no running water, no education. But he said to me, I refused to accept that my environment was the ceiling of my potential. He began reading borrowed newspapers, listening to business conversations through open windows. Today, he owns a global logistics company that ships to over 40 countries. What changed? Not his birthplace, his belief. You see, eagles are born in nests, but they are built to own the sky. You might have been born in a place where dreams die young, but that doesn't mean yours has to. There are people who've been born into addiction, raised by silence, nurtured by trauma. But the truth is, you are not what raised you. You are what you choose to become beyond it. When God called Abraham, He didn't consult his father's house. When He chose Esther, He didn't ask for royal bloodlines. When He chose you, He already factored in your dysfunction and still said yes. Why? Because divine destiny is not inherited, it is awakened. It doesn't need your pedigree, it needs your permission. Stop using your past as an excuse to stay small. You were never meant to fit the mold, you were meant to break it. Every single one of us is given something more powerful than time, more dangerous than talent, and more influential than money. It's called choice. And the tragedy of humanity is not that we are weak, it's that we waste our choices. Your life right now is not the result of your enemies, your education, or even your opportunities. Your life is the result of what you have consistently chosen to accept, believe, and pursue. Deuteronomy 30:19 doesn't say, I have set your fate before you. It says, I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. God Himself will not choose for you. That's how much authority He gave you. Heaven respects your decisions so much that it will let you walk away from your own greatness. That means your decisions are sacred. Every time you choose to forgive, you are building the future. Every time you choose discipline over convenience, you're constructing a new reality. And every time you ignore what's wise for what's easy, you're not just delaying your destiny, you're denying it. I remember a young woman I mentored from South Africa. She grew up in an abusive home, ran away at 14, lived in shelters, sold handmade bracelets just to survive. She told me, no one ever asked me what I wanted to become. One day she heard a talk on identity and choice. Something clicked. She chose to study online courses on coding from a public library, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. Today she's leading a tech firm in Nairobi. She didn't pray her way there. She chose her way there. You see, your life is like a vehicle. Your emotions are not the driver. Your circumstances are not the driver. You are. And until you take the wheel, you will always crash into other people's expectations. The enemy doesn't need to steal your talent if he can confuse your choices. He doesn't need to destroy you, just distract you. Because every moment you spend chasing what doesn't matter is a moment you're not becoming who you were born to be. But I'm going to tell you something bold. You are not waiting on God. God is waiting on your decision. Miracles follow motion, breakthroughs follow boldness. But nothing in the kingdom responds to hesitation. When the prodigal son came to his senses, he chose to return. That was the turning point, not the apology, the decision. So ask yourself tonight, with all the love and fire in my voice, are you choosing the life you want, or are you drifting toward the one you fear? Because if you don't decide, life will decide for you. And the worst thing isn't failure. It's floating through life, never having made a real decision to become more. You don't stumble into greatness. You step into it, one choice at a time. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is a messenger. It is not there to destroy you. It is there to demand your attention. But here's the truth most people never grasp. Pain will either trap you or train you. It will either define your identity or refine your strength. You don't get to avoid it, but you do get to decide what it makes of you. Everyone in life will encounter suffering. Some wear it like chains. Others use it as wings. The difference is not in the pain. The difference is in the perspective. You are not what hurt you. You are what you decide to do after it. A broken heart doesn't mean you're a broken person. A betrayal doesn't mean your trust should die. A failure doesn't mean your future has vanished. But when pain becomes your identity, you stop evolving. And let me tell you about a man I met in Haiti. His wife and 2 daughters were killed in the earthquake of 2010. Everything he loved was buried under rubble. For 3 months, he didn't speak. He told me, I lost my reason to wake up. But then he walked through a field of tents one day and saw children with no families sleeping in the dust. Something ignited. He opened a school under a tarp with 2 chairs and a chalkboard. That school now educates over 300 kids. He said, I couldn't bring my daughters back, but I could make sure someone else's daughters lived with dignity. He turned tragedy into transformation. Pain didn't paralyze him, it redirected him. Even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane didn't skip pain. He submitted to it, not because he enjoyed it, but because he understood it had a role. Pain was the price of resurrection. Without the cross, there is no crown. Without the valley, there is no authority to stand on the mountain. Stop asking why it hurt and start asking what it came to teach you. Every scar is evidence that you survived. Every tear is a seed. But a seed buried and not believed in will rot, not grow. What you choose to do with your pain will determine whether it buries you or birds you. But the next time life hits you, don't just cry. Decide. Decide not to stay there. Decide not to make a home out of your wounds. Decide to rise, not just recover. Because pain may be the thing that tried to break you, but it can also be the thing God uses to build the strongest version of you. Don't waste your pain. Transform it. Let it push you, not paralyze you. Let it teach you how to rise. Make something clear. Your future is not decided by your passion. It's decided by your patterns. You can pray all you want, dream all you like, speak in tongues and shout until your throat is dry. But if your habits do not align with your hope, you will never become who you were created to be. God does not bless desire. He blesses discipline. You don't attract greatness with good intentions. You attract it by daily, unseen decisions. The kind no one claps for. The man you become is not shaped on the stage. It's shaped in the silence. In the early hours, the hard choices, the self-denial when no one is watching, and it's in those private battles that destiny is either forged or forfeited. Habits are more powerful than emotions. Emotions are unpredictable. They change with weather, with mood, with pressure. But habits, they're like the skeleton of your future. They hold you up when everything else wants to collapse. You want to see your future? Look at your daily routine. What you do every day is quietly designing who you'll be 5 years from now. I met a young man in the Philippines who told me he wanted to be a leader, a voice for his generation. I said, "Show me your mornings." He was silent. He wanted visibility without responsibility. I told him, "Your future is hidden in your daily rhythm. If your habits are chaotic, your calling will always stay distant." Months later, he sent me a message. He had started waking up early, studying, serving in his local school, reading 2 books a month. Today, he mentors over 1,000 young men across Southeast Asia, not because he got lucky, because he got serious. God didn't make you a robot. He gave you rhythm. The sun rises with consistency. The tides move with order. Even miracles have patterns. Jesus often healed after acts of obedience. Wash in the pool. Stretch out your hand. Pick up your mat. Why? Because action activates the supernatural. Not noise, not hype, not emotion. Action. You keep asking God for more, but what are you doing with what He already gave you? You want clarity, but you haven't even mastered consistency. You want increase, but you haven't committed to excellence in the small. Let me tell you something. God will never elevate a lazy steward. So stop romanticizing destiny. Stop fantasizing about the future. Build it. Brick by brick, choice by choice, habit by habit. Because what you do repeatedly becomes what you are permanently. Discipline is the womb of transformation. And if you don't respect your routine, you will betray your calling. As I ever tell you a truth that many avoid because it costs too much to accept, you cannot rise while clinging to what you refuse to release. Growth is not only about what you reach for, it's about what you walk away from. There are seasons where elevation demands separation, not out of arrogance, but out of assignment, not because you are better than them, but because where you're going cannot survive with who you're still holding on to. Some of you are stuck, not because you're weak, but because you're loyal to what's draining you. You've been trying to carry people who have no intention of growing. You're trying to explain vision to minds that are addicted to survival. And let me say this with love and clarity. You can't take everyone with you. Some people are only meant to be chapters in your story, not the whole book. And if you keep rereading old chapters, you'll never start the next one. Abraham had to leave his father's house, not because he hated it, but because inheritance wasn't there. Jesus had to leave the crowd to go up the mountain, not because the crowd was evil, but because the next level of glory wasn't in the noise. Every calling comes with a clearing. If God is preparing a table before you, don't drag chairs for those who mock your hunger. I met a woman from Trinidad who left an abusive marriage, broke generational patterns, and raised 3 sons on her own. She said, I had to walk away from what was familiar, even though it scared me. But staying would have cost me my identity. Now, one of her sons is a medical doctor, another is a community leader, and the third just launched a nonprofit for women in crisis. Her sacrifice became their strength. Her decision to walk away from dysfunction unlocked a future of restoration. Sometimes the weight that's holding you down isn't the enemy, it's the company you keep. If the people around you don't challenge your thinking, confront your excuses, or call you higher, they are not your circle. They are your ceiling. Stop asking for transformation while entertaining contamination. You can soar like an eagle while nesting with pigeons. Release is not loss, it's alignment. Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. So hear me clearly. Be bold enough to walk alone if it means walking in the direction of your becoming. Because the ones who reach the mountain are rarely the ones who stayed at the bottom pleasing everybody. You don't rise by dragging dead weight. You rise by deciding what's worth carrying. Let me say this with fire in my bones. No one becomes anything by accident. You don't drift into greatness. You don't stumble into transformation. Becoming is not magic. It's intentional. And the greatest deception of our generation is the belief that identity is something we discover instead of something we decide to develop. The world will tell you, just be yourself. But what if the self you've been is broken, fearful, bitter, lazy, insecure? What if the self you've been is the result of trauma, not truth? That's not authenticity. That's bondage disguised as identity. You were never called to stay the same. You were called to grow, to evolve, to become. Romans 12 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not your feelings, not your memories, not your environment, your mind. That means transformation begins with how you think, and how you think determines who you give yourself permission to become. I once met a young man in Nairobi. He was raised in a neighborhood so violent, they called it the pit. He told me every man I knew was either in a gang or in a grave. But one day, while riding on a bus, he overheard an elderly man say, every day you wake up is a vote for the man you want to become. That sentence arrested his soul. He said, I didn't even know who I wanted to be, but I knew who I didn't want to stay. So he started voting every day, waking up earlier, volunteering, reading, choosing a different path. Today he's a lawyer advocating for youth justice. His entire life changed, not by chance, but by choice. You see, identity is not fixed. It's fluid under the authority of discipline. And what you repeatedly do becomes who you permanently are. If you don't like the reflection, don't curse the mirror. Change the mold. Becoming is violent to comfort. It is disruptive to complacency. You cannot remain loyal to convenience and expect to be transformed. Transformation costs something. It costs delay. It costs misunderstanding. It costs sacrifice. But hear me, it pays in power. Some of you are waiting for permission to change. Let this be your confirmation. You don't need their validation. You need your own decision. The only person who can stop you from becoming is the one in your mirror. And the only permission you need has already been written in the ink of grace and grit. So now I ask you, who are you committed to becoming? Not in theory, not in fantasy, but in reality. Because if you dare to choose fully, finally, and fearlessly, then hell cannot hold you, history cannot define you, and the past cannot chain you. You are becoming every single day. Make sure it's the version heaven can recognize. I don't care what they label you in school. I don't care what your ex said. I don't care if you failed 10 times. As long as you've got breath in your body, you have power to choose. Choose discipline over distraction. Choose growth over gossip. Choose legacy over laziness. Choose to become who God saw when He formed you. Heaven is not impressed by what you do. Heaven responds to who you become. So don't just live life. Design it. Build it. Transform it. Because at the end of the day, you are what you choose to become.